we many times aren't practicing what we preach. And that's something we need to pay attention to, is like, what's my own nervous system? What's my own sense of overwhelm? When do I get to be well taken care of, right? Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
What is up, team? Welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast with the amazing Dr. Lona Cook and myself, Dr. Bobby Lajasovic. Dr. Lona, what's going on? How are we doing?
Hey, Bobby, I'm great. Just wrapped up a busy afternoon shift here, and it's great to see your face after you're back from vacation.
Yes, that's correct. I had a lot of fun actually listening to you and Dr. Chris last week. So it was kind of surreal, listening to you guys. I was like, hey, I should be there. I feel like I'm missing out. I feel like I'm missing out on a fun conversation. So that's right, guys. I was away. I was away on vacation in Europe for 3 weeks, sunny Europe for 3 weeks, which is magical. And I must say, when we came back from our trip and from vacation, or we call it holiday in this part of the world, we were on holidays. I know in the US, holiday is like a public holiday, what we call vacation holidays. So when I came back from holidays, you might hear me say it like that. I was looking at my practice, and man, it's been such an awesome week back. It's just been so much fun. I've been loving getting back into all of it, and looking forward to today's podcast. You'll probably notice that there is an extra spring in my step. There is an extra tonality in my voice, maybe a 1 octave higher than what I usually speak at. And that's the benefits of a vacation. So, Dr. Lona and myself were sitting here talking about, hey, you know what? We really need to talk about how vacations supercharge and build and accelerate the growth of your practice. So we're like, let's do it. Let's share best practices around this, because I know it's such a big topic, Lona, that I see coaching clients struggle with, regardless of how long they've been in practice for. Just this idea of taking vacations. What's been your experience with this? Have you seen the same thing?
Yeah, and I think it's been painted sometimes like it's a bad thing to leave your practice. And that's what we're hoping to help you understand, is actually taking a vacation many times helps you grow your practice, not only by refilling your own battery, but also in, when you change your mindset by getting out of your normal routine, likely you have new ideas, as well as many times you come back to the practice and you see it through a fresh lens, and you probably have some busier days. So there's just so many reasons why it's an important thing, that I'm lucky that early on in practice, somebody shared that with me. And I don't ever feel like I felt guilty about taking days off of practice. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, could I shut my practice down? We're here to tell you, yes, you need to do that. Even if you're an owner operator and you're in a season where it all is on your shoulders, it's still going to be worthy for you to take some days off and recoup, and know that you'll come back and have better days because of it.
Yeah, right. So I couldn't agree with you more. And what I want to do is I want this to be as practical for you guys and as application driven, I guess, right? As applicable as possible, so you guys can apply it to your lives. So I want to take a bit of a moment, Lona, so we can have a bit of a chat, because I know you and I both have thought about this a lot, put a lot of intention behind it. I've spoken to a lot of people. I even read about this a lot. But I want to take a moment first, I guess, to speak about the why behind it. So what's the why? Like, why are vacations so important? And even further, we can go deeper with this. Why are the rhythms? There's daily, there's weekly, there's monthly, there's quarterly rhythms, and dare I say it, there's yearly rhythms that you do that are super important for recharging your battery and presenting the best version of you. So I want to speak maybe for the first 10 minutes about the why behind it, because I know if you truly capture the essence of the why, then we can go into the practical stuff. And I'm really interested to hear about your rhythms. So how do you keep yourself sharp? How do you keep yourself purposeful? How do you keep yourself energized? And what are the practical tips that you can give? I'm sure there's things that you're doing weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, that's helping you stay sharp. But let's just jump into the why behind it first. Why don't you kick us off with it, Lona? So vacations. Why are they so key? What is it that's going on? Why do we all know we feel awesome on the back end of it, but yet we struggle with it so often?
Yeah. Well, we're not machines, right? And as chiropractors, we certainly I hope, understand the power of having a like balanced nervous system. And we're not separate from that concept. So if we're teaching our patients and our practice members that, we also need to be giving ourselves, the utmost care that we can deliver in not only getting our own chiropractic care, but also taking stock of our own reserves, right? So we many times aren't practicing what we preach, and that's something we need to pay attention to. Is like, what's my own nervous system? What's my own sense of overwhelm? When do I get to be well taken care of, right? And especially the busier you get in practice, it becomes more critical. And if you have kids and other family members and different hats that you wear that demand things of you, your resiliency factor needs to keep going up. So prior to me becoming a mom and having multiple practices and stuff, I took good care of myself. But as like the demand for me essentially went up, I realized, well, this is like non-negotiable. Like I am not a good mom if I'm not taking good care of myself. I'm not a good practice owner if I'm not doing these things. So vacations fit in that avenue. And then Bobby, you brought this up, and I'd love to hear how you think about it. But if we recognize that we are part of nature, and I think humans sometimes struggle with that, like we are animals at our core also. And so just like you wouldn't give your dog Diet Coke, you wouldn't expect an animal to not go without periods of rest and having that natural rhythm. And just like the bears hibernate in the winter, we have seasonality to how we work as well, even if we don't want to admit it, right? Just like those of us that are in winter climates, we may not have as much energy in the winter season sometimes as we do during the summer. And that's partly because we're not machines. And so like we are supposed to slow down a little bit. So when we recognize this, then we can build a cadence of rhythm around it, and then really actually move the needle in many areas of our life better, because we're being aware of how our nervous system needs support and needs times of rest and push and rest and push. And that may look different at different seasons. So that's really how I look at it at this point. Is I take full stock of where am I at in my internal compass before I really agree to what I can or can't do.
And would you say that's a level of deeper self-awareness that you have? Because some people, they just think, oh, well, I can always go. I know I've felt guilty of this in the past, where I'm like, no, I feel good. Like energetically, I feel good. But then I take a holiday or a vacation, and the back end of it, I go, oh my goodness, I'm so much more sharper now. I can't believe I was operating like that before. Even though in the moment I felt okay.
Yeah.
You said you developed like a deeper level of consciousness around it?
Certainly. And I walk through, like, I have had two kids in the last 8 years, but I also had a mom that was really, really ill, and I had to help my dad with caretaking. So I went through the last decade launching practices, having babies, and watching my mom decline and eventually pass away. And so as my mom transitioned and my kids got old enough that they weren't being nursed anymore, I realized, whoa, I have just had like such a heavy lift over the last decade that, first of all, I need to like pour into myself more than I ever given myself capacity to before, because I just realized like that isn't normal what I just went through. And even though I could do it, I can't sustain that forever. So like Bobby and I are going to talk about daily, weekly, monthly, yearly rhythms, but there's even like periods of larger quantity of time where you may have to, out of sheer necessity, be in a season of your life. I just talked to a DC earlier this week who had to help a family member stabilize a practice due to like a major health challenge. And so she was in total flight or fight out of necessity for like 2 years trying to balance her practice and someone else's. It's like sometimes life is going to throw these really challenging situations, and we'll adapt to them. We'll try and do our best. But then it's like, well, how do I get that resiliency factor back? So that period of immense push for me energetically to just make all things work and still have healthy kids and take care of my mom and things like that, like really let me realize, like, A, what do I need so that I don't implode? And then B, what is sustainable, what isn't sustainable, and like have a real hard look in the mirror at times. And I think that awareness is something we all build. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think everybody needed to hear that. We've all faced certain challenges in our life, whether their own personal health challenges that we faced, or whether they're personal family challenges that we faced, or professional. I mean, they come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Let me just expand on that a little bit. one of the things that I've recognized and realized, and if you've been in the Remarkable Practice Tribe for any period of time, you've probably heard us say this line multiple times. And hopefully, the more you hear it, the more relevant it becomes for you. But the line is energy is everything.
Mm.
We use it in practice a lot. You sometimes hear it expanded, and you'll hear things like when energy is up, practice is up. When an energy is down, practice is down. When energy is flat, practice is flat. So practice is all about energy. However, I'm going to take that one step further and say, actually, life is all about energy. I had a family member recently that they were kind of going through a health challenge, which is a health challenge they can absolutely they can overcome. And when I speak to people close to that individual, they're like, "Oh yeah, they've been a little bit down, they've been a little bit moody, been a little bit irritated." And then I spend some time with that individual, and I just infuse energy in them, and the back end they completely change. Right? They're like, "Oh, they're good, they're happy," and I'm just, nah, this person just needs some presence. My grandma, God bless her, she's alive. She's 91 years old, and whenever she goes and the family is there and people around her, it's like, wow, and there's presence. It's not just the family is there, people are sitting on their mobile phones. The family is there present and engaging and having fun and making barbecues and discussing and having a great time. It's like, man, it infuses her. It makes her like 10, 15 years younger. I look at, and I didn't get this line. I can't take credit for this line. I actually got this line from a realtor there in the US, a guy called Ryan Serhan. He makes a good point. He says, work hard, play harder, and then love hardest. Relationships are the same as well. It's like the energy that you put into things, the energy that you get out of it. And I just recognize that that's in everything. People love people that resonate at a high frequency energetically. And you're going to be a magnet in all aspects of your life if you're vibrating at a high frequency and if you're doing that authentically. So it's not about just putting it on and like, oh yeah, great, oh that's right. No, it's about there's this authenticity and it's an attractive force. So it's attractive whether it's for attracting new patients in the first place. It's attractive for whether it's converting someone into your tribe and starting care. It's attractive for team members. It's attractive for partners, for spouses, for friends, for literally whenever I have a friend that's facing a challenge of some kind, really when I kind of tap into the essence of it, it's an energetic thing. Like they're vibrating at a lower frequency. And sometimes it's because, Lona, what you said, there's a there's a confluence of multiple things in life that have added up that maybe in the moment you don't realize, but when you zoom out, it makes a lot more sense. Or sometimes in hindsight, like what you just said, it makes a lot more sense. You got a lot more clarity, right?
Yep. Yeah. So good, Bobby. And I, what you just shared with everyone there, like, we could just end the podcast right there. And as long as you could really, really get that and apply that to all areas of your business, it's all energy. And if there's something you don't like that's happening, go back and look at the energy behind it and then make some tweaks and you're going to get a different result, right? And part of how we fine tune the energy is knowing that we are a conduit and our system, our nervous system is pumping out that energy, right? So when we're not well taken care of, we haven't had enough vacation time, or maybe we've been distracted. Maybe we've had vacation, but we didn't rest, right? Like there's an element there too of like, when you're at home, be at home. When you're at work, be at work, right? Like, are you focused, right? Because you could take all the time off, and if you're not allowing yourself to just like shut it down and rest, then it's not doing what it was intended to do, right?
Yeah, spot on the mark. And we're going to get into, don't worry guys, we're going to get into the practical tips, okay? Because we're at the moment just talking about and making sure that it sinks into your nervous system, the importance of this. So it's not just a good idea, that it's absolutely essential if you want to grow. And the key word here is sustainably, okay? We want to go sustainably. So I want to just chat a little bit more about it because in my dealings with chiropractors, and quite frankly, then this expands to the community as well, we talk a lot about core values, and core values are those things in life that are important to people. And every single human being has a list of core values, those things that are most important to them, all the way down to those things that are least important to them, okay? One thing that I find repetitively comes around as a core value when we do this unearthing process, especially for CEOs, is this core value of freedom. People love this core value of freedom. I have a core value of freedom. I want to have freedom. I want to live life on my terms. I'm trying to buy back time. I've got a great practice. It's successful now. I want to turn it into a great business. What I'm hearing them say is I want more freedom. I want to have the benefits of business ownership and growth and scale and development, but not all of my back. Most of them will have a core value around freedom, and pretty much all of them will also have a core value around peace of mind, freedom and peace of mind. I was reading Ray Dalio's book on this in Principles, and he talks about also, he wrote this book, one of the world's biggest hedge funds, around successful principles over his career that he wants to impart in the next generation. And one of the things he talks about is these quarterly rhythms, and how as a leader, it's so important to establish quarterly rhythm where you take time out, because when you remove yourself from your business, you give yourself a fresh perspective, you zoom out, you have a 10,000-foot view. That's so often where epiphanies happen, where breakthroughs happen, where realizations happen. And, every time that I take a vacation, I come back and I make changes in how we deliver things. And, there's the old saying of, if you keep doing the same thing but expect different outcomes, that's the definition of insanity. But sometimes in the moment, you kind of think, well, there's also a saying that says focus over time is what leads to outcomes. So they kind of used to contradict themselves in my mind. I'm like, which one is it? Is it keep doing the same thing for a long period of time? Or is it shift and change things around? I'm like, they're bloody contradicting each other. Right? And then what my realization was is, when you remove yourself and you get fresh perspective, which is what vacations do for you, it allows you to see which are the activities that you do need to focus and keep doing, but which are the ones that you need to cull and stop doing, or refine or redefine how you're doing them. You know what I
And
mean?
if you're bringing stagnant energy to any of your activities, that tone is not matching what you're after, right? So
Yes, exactly right. 100%. So, there's just too many people that achieve success, however you define it, but by their definition, on a huge level, that point to this as being a key factor for you to ignore it. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey spoke about this. He gave the analogy of two people who are in the forest chopping down trees, and they're chopping, 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 and after a while, they start to get run down, they start to get tired and exhausted. Person one says, hey, let's take some time off. We're going to stop and sharpen the saw, right? Because my saw's become blunt. I can't chop down as many trees. Person two is like, no, we're too busy to do that. We need to keep sawing away. Chop, 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 saw, chop. Okay. Person one stops, takes time out, catches a breather, sharpens the saw, sharpens the axe, goes back to the trees. And even though they're slightly behind, very quickly they catch up, and then they exceed, and they far exceed person B because they're sharpening the saw. Stephen Covey talks about that, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? So I look at it and go, there's just way too many people that speak about this and speak about it in hindsight. Because when I heard Ray Dalio spoke about it, Ray Dalio was like 70 years old. Stephen Covey at the time was also in his late 60s. So I was in my 20s when I heard both of this. And I was like, I don't want to have to wait till my 60s to learn this lesson. I want to start learning it now and not feel guilty for taking time off. And the final thing I'm going to add on this before we talk about some practical steps is, a good mentor and friend of mine, Dr. Pat Gentempo, was speaking to a mentor of his, Nathaniel Brandon, on his when he was on his deathbed. And I might butcher the story, but I remember Patrick saying, one of the things that they asked him on his deathbed was is there something now looking back in your life, Nathaniel, that you wish you did differently? And I hope I don't butcher the exact words that he used, but he said, in essence, yes, I wish that I'd learned earlier that rest and recuperation is a valid human activity. So I think that's quite profound, right? From someone who's such a massive philosopher. Like, I wish that I knew that rest and recuperation was a valid human activity. So something that's essential in order for us to hit our goals, not something that's a luxury.
And kids aren't so different. They teach us this, right? Where they like play so hard, and then they like hit a wall and fall asleep, right? But you can see when they haven't had a nap because they're like super crabby, or there's like, things happening. We're not so different than that. It just looks slightly different. It's like, if we haven't been well rested, like likely the way that we're dealing with our team or the way that we're thinking about our business is through a lens that we don't maybe need it to be the lens that we're coming through. So just think of yourself like a child that needs a nap. Just make sure that you're prioritizing some of these things so that you get the best results, right?
Yes, spot on the mark. You nailed it, right? And just remember that the rhythms of taking time off is important. Your practice is going to be okay. All right. It's going to be okay. And here's the general rule that I stick by in the early build days. 1 week, no one will notice. Believe me, no one will care 1 week. Okay. 2 weeks, you'll be fine. If you took 2 weeks off, your office will still be fine. If you took 3 weeks off, all right, you'll feel it. Okay, you'll definitely feel it. However, at the end of the day, you can still do it. I would rather come back to the office and deal with a few pissed off patients, then stay and deal with a pissed off me.
That's good. And you can take long weekends where you need to. You get creative. One of the things Bobby and I were talking about too is just when you do it right, you're actually going to learn a lot on your return and probably before you leave, because your days become tighter and stacked. So you learn how to grow into new capacity, because if you, let's say you took a long weekend and you shaved off your Thursday and your Friday, and those were vacation days, well, your Wednesday and your Monday are probably busier than they've ever been, in leading up to those things. Those are great opportunities to like test out capacity in your office. So if you haven't done that, I'd highly encourage you trying to feel what that feels like in your own nervous system to, if you're used to seeing 30 people in a day, see 50. If you're used to seeing 50, see 75, like on these days on the front end and the back end of your vacation.
Yep, spot on. So let's now pivot. Here's what I want to do. I want to shift because success leaves clues. And we talked about how important it is to recharge the battery. And we spoke earlier in the podcast about how there's quarterly rhythms. So I just had a quarterly vacation. 3 weeks I had off. I was in Europe. I'll have another 2-week vacation at the end of the year for Christmas time. So there's quarterly rhythms. At the end of Q1, I had 5 days where I went up the coast here in Australia with our whole family. We went to a place called Byron Bay. And then at the end of Q3, so coming up in a few weeks time, I'll take another express trip, a 5-day trip as well. So there's quarterly rhythms that we do. Vacations are a part of that. However, we know there's monthly, weekly, and daily rhythms that we use to recharge our battery, keep our energy at its peak, so that we make sure that we show up the best version of ourselves in every endeavor. I'd love to hear a little bit about your routines around how do you manage energy? How do we get the best version of Lona? What are things that you've noticed, Lona, that help pour into your cup and keep you at that level that you need to be able to lead the life that you lead?
Yeah. Thanks. It's been an evolution. When again, it was before having kids and was building one practice, I really learned how to flex a muscle first. So, if you feel like you haven't pushed it, maybe you're flexing the muscle where you push it, right? Like maybe you have to grow, just like you'd have to grow in, carrying a heavier weight, right? So I did not take vacations right away. I took vacation days and not weeks at first. So if it's uncomfortable for you to even think about taking a longer, weekend off, like great, let's try that, but let's push during the days. And what I realized is if I pushed hard, let's say I was going to build my practice by marketing and training and doing all these things from 8 till 6 p.m. When I got home at 6 p.m., I would try and like have a nourishing dinner, go for a run, making sure that I'm like doing what I need to do to shut it off, because I knew I was going to pick it right back up in the morning by getting up, getting focused, getting my energy moving, taking care of my physical body, doing those rhythms that I knew were going to lead to just like a successful life. And so some of that was recognize I need to practice what I preach. I need to take care of myself. I need to be drinking water. I need to do all the basics, right? So if you're not doing these things, like that's where you need to start. Then as I had success around growing a primary practice, and I realized like more demand was going to show in like opening multiple locations and then eventually having kids and, all of that, I really realized that for me, sometimes it was more boundaries in place. Like this time is not available for other people, or this is a time where I'm putting boundaries on myself. Like I'm not going to have my phone by me. I'm not going to, because I would be likely to answer it and respond versus like, I need to like go take some time off. So it was keeping all those basics going, but it started to even have more constraints around like what time was I going to be focused at home versus like what time was really truly work time, what was the priority during the work time that day, because don't get me wrong, you can get busy and that can zap your energy. But are you being productive and focused on the right things? And that's part of cultivating that in your nervous system, is feeling like you actually moved the needle on the things you needed to move to the needle on that day, right? And that's part of self-care, is just having good focus. So focus at home too. Like tonight, when we're done with this, Bobby, like my oldest, he has had his first day of school and he was in the office this afternoon getting adjusted. So I heard a little bit about it, but I'm going to go home and really be present with him and like hear about his first day. And that's part of me feeling nourished as a mother. Like I need that time. Right. So I just really learned how to create focus, and I still am working on that. Like at each level, there's more focus that needs to happen and more discipline around your focus. And at the same time, knowing things like, weekly or biweekly massages, all the stuff that you do for your body, because your body is a high demand machine, both as like the mental output you're putting through And like the fact, if you're adjusting hundreds of people a week, like that's physically demanding on your body, right? So those of you that are building that muscle of being able to adjust a lot, know full and well you are going to have to keep training your physical, strength to keep up with decades in practice.
Yep, spot on the mark. When you're adjusting, you are giving, loving, and serving. Okay, you're giving of yourself, you're giving energy. When I was studying chiropractic, I worked in a bakery. And the thing about that bakery, the hard part about it is I have to start at 5 a.m. in the morning. But you know what? The easy part about it is I wouldn't have to talk to anyone probably until midday because I would be in the back, head down, just get ticking off my to-do list, right, for that day. I'd rock up at 5, there'd be no one else awake. There might be another person in the bakery already, that's the baker. He's also half asleep. So I wouldn't have to engage anyone. I wouldn't have to give any energy of myself other than just get through my tasks. Yeah. You try to rock up to an office and be like that. It's the complete opposite.
Right.
So don't forget the fact that you are giving every single day to yourself. And absolutely, this is why you need to pour into your cup first to make sure that your cup is fully nourished and to make sure that you're giving from a place of complete energy. So I love the rhythms that you shared. I'm going to unpack some of my rhythms. I've broken them down here for you guys into daily. There's things that I do daily. And maybe, Lona, we can do a podcast if there's enough interest. I'm sure people will be interested in what's the typical day in the life of Lona Cook. All right. I'd love for you to walk us through the typical day. When does Lona go to bed? What does she do before bed? When does she wake up in the morning? What's your morning routine? How do you plan out your day? When do you train? When do you focus on practice? How do you do team meetings and trainings? Episode for another time, but it just came to mind when I went through this because I know there's going to be a lot of interest in that, right? So here are my daily rhythms. Here's the analogy that I use, guys. Ready? So you buy a brand new mobile phone, and one of the things that you're really happy with when you get a brand new mobile phone is that battery is like on fire. Right? It's full battery, it holds the charge, fantastic. And at the end of the day, the battery depletes itself, so you pop it into the charger, you charge it up, but it never quite recharges 100%. It recharges like 99.997%, right? And with each charge, it's losing a little bit of its holding power, and then eventually, you're charging it and it's holding for like 4 hours. And you're like, oh man, this battery, what's going on with it? It's not performing how it is. So then you have to periodically do something, whether it's change your phone or whatever it is, okay? I look at the same as my internal battery. And I want to pre-frame this by saying, on a PDP profile scan, I'm an energy 7 out of 7. And when I'm under duress or stress, I drop to a 6.5. Okay. So my energy drain doesn't show that much. It doesn't change that much. But in saying that, I see the difference, okay, like in how I perform, absolutely. So here are my daily rhythms that I do. These are the things that are essential in order for me to be at my best. And I'm just going to throw them out here. I won't go into detail with them. Again, we can do a separate podcast on this if we need. But sleep is an essential element for me. I need to be getting my 8 hours sleep a night, and in the optimal sleep window. Okay, I train at 4:30 in the morning, so I need to be in bed by 8:30. Right, 8:30 to 9 o'clock in order for me to get that optimal window of sleep, 8 hours of sleep. I can function at 7. Don't get me wrong. I can function at 6. I've done that. Okay, I fly sometimes to the US for 3 days for an immersion, fly back, the next day. I can do it. Don't get me wrong. But if I do that continually, and if you throw out 5.5 hours sleep at me, I'm not going to be my best. Okay, no way. Sleep, essential component of it. And I won't get into the details of all this stuff, but I want to throw it out there. Nutrition, how I'm eating, has an impact. We try and stick to wholesome, proper paleo-style foods that are naturally occurring. Okay, I don't want to overburden my body and my system with things that are manufactured or processed in any shape or form. Training and exercise. So I will daily keep an eye on my sleep, daily keep an eye on my nutrition, daily keep an eye on training. Every day I want to do something that elevates my heart rate. Usually I train in the mornings, first thing in the morning. Sometimes though that can be in the afternoon, but exercise training is essential for me. From a daily rhythm point of view, goal setting and goal revision is an important part of me refreshing my battery. Just reminding myself what's the bigger vision and what's the bigger goal that I'm moving towards, and then chunking that down to the current goal I'm moving towards. And then good, healthy, proper supplementation, right? These are daily things that I need to make sure are there every single day. Weekly rhythms, multiple times a week. There's a couple of things, I'll just throw these out there, but multiple times a week, I'm either getting adjusted, I'm saunering, so infrared saunas, ice bathing. So those 3 things definitely I do on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. I need to also on a weekly basis make sure that I have time for friends and socializing. So whether that's on Saturday, I'm not going out and getting tanked and getting home at 3 o'clock in the morning, definitely. But I value good friendships and I value good relationships. So weekly, I definitely go and catch up with friends that are aligned in core values. It's important weekly to have right time with your spouse, vision casting time. You hear Dr. Frank talking about coffee dates, which is planning out your life, and then date night, which is what you did in the first place for love. So that's important. So these are some of the weekly rhythms that I do to make sure that it keeps me recharged. Monthly rhythms. I love monthly to review my month. I feel as a reflection, gratitude, and appreciation is a very important thing to energize your battery and to stop and actually take note of how far you've come. So while you can do that daily, I like to do an exercise on it monthly. I've got a few little things here as well. Haircut. I want to make sure that I'm well groomed, getting my haircut. Usually I do that on a 3 to 4 weekly cadence as well. I have a good feeling, and just like anything, I put energy and intention into it. I don't just, it's not a thing I've got to do and I just sit in that chair. It's like I actually enjoy the process, right? And then seminars. I like monthly to get to some kind of event or seminar so that it's pouring into me professionally. I'm doing daily pouring, whether it's reading books, weekly pouring, like I've been getting coached weekly for 12 years. And then, monthly, I like to get to some kind of live event and share presence with other like-minded people that share qualities that are the same mission. And then if we got quarterly, we've got things like board meetings. So that's a big vision casting and big getting all the team on the same page together. And holidays and vacations. So I have a quarterly cadence to our holidays and vacations, 2 majors and 2 minors in the year. So these are some of the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly rhythms that I build in. Am I perfect with it? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Have I become much better with it? Absolutely. Because in the early days, when I was in my first associateship, learning how to build a practice, my first year was horrible. And even though I was adjusting like 20 people a week on average for that first year, not having a clue what I was doing, somehow in my mind, I was too busy to exercise. My exercise went out the window. I was eating like crap, right? Because I was stressed. I was getting to bed late, right? Even have to wake up early. I wasn't catching up with friends because I was too busy trying to figure out this bloody career, that was broken. I wasn't getting adjusted regularly. I wasn't doing any of these things. And so, that's kind of where it started. And that's kind of where it's evolved to at the moment. So those are some of the rhythms that really help me keep at my energetic best and keep me in peak state for everything that requires that.
That was great, Bobby. And I want to offer from what he said, like, if you're someone like what Bobby just shared about when he started, where it's like, you need the discipline and you need to like hold yourself accountable to building that muscle of having discipline so you can learn the things that are nourishing to you. There may become a new season down the road where you actually, part of what would be nourishing to you in this like conversation of vacation, where like you also give yourself some compassion to not always be super disciplined. Like I feel this as a mom, right? Like after having my kids, I had to learn how to lighten up on some of the things that had built me to a quote unquote place of success, that it was that version of me needed to like, have a different rhythm when I was going to be a nursing mom that was still CEOing, right? Like there had to be a much more delicate dance of what my expectations of my rhythms could be. So I just want to offer that too, is like the discipline to learn how to get a rhythm is then also the discipline to ask yourself, is this rhythm still working for this period of my life, right? Or am I actually creating more stress for myself sometimes in trying to hold myself to a discipline I had before? Something
Yes,
to think
thank you for bringing that up. That's something that obviously I cannot share, being a male that never will nurse or could nurse. However, going through that exact experience right now with my wife, so she's nursing and she's a chiropractor and she's alongside everything that we do in business as well. I'm glad that you brought that up, and give yourself permission that, it's okay. If you had a tougher night, sleep in the morning. Sometimes it's important to prioritize the extra hour to sleep rather than like, I've got to get to the gym at this time.
Yes.
Recognize, and that's why I asked at the beginning, have you had a deeper level of consciousness develop around it? Because that's where it stems from, I feel. Understanding what does your body need and require, knowing what's coming up rather than, forcing yourself into something because you think that's what you need to do, but it's actually not the right thing that your body needs at that point.
So good. This is great, Bobby. Thank you for sharing all of those ideas with people.
Yeah. So there you go, guys. So why vacations will supercharge the growth of your business. You heard it here. And the reason why, remember, energy is everything. So you got to do everything possible to make sure your energetic state is where it needs to be. Your people are relying on it. Your team is relying on it. Your families are relying on it. And we need the best version of you. Chiropractic needs the best version of you. Yes? Lona, any final thoughts you want to take us out?
I just want to go on vacation.
Well, the next best thing, plan it in your calendar. If you've got something to look forward to, it makes everything easier, okay? If you haven't done this yet, guys, action step is pull out your calendar today, pop your next vacation in there, right? It's okay. Practice is going to be all right. Thank you so much, Lona. Great episode, guys. We will talk to you soon. Hey, if you enjoyed this, please, guys, give us a 5-star podcast review. Click on the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of the app and go to the show and just review the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate all those 5-star reviews and all the positive feedback. And until next week, stay remarkable, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.